guys, how's it going? In today's video I'm going to be building a 4-inch exhaust for my truck so that maybe you can follow along and build one for yours. Stay tuned. Hit it, bud! Guys, how's it going? Today I'm going to be doing our build video. Last time I built an air intake system for my truck, and now I'm building the other end. I'm actually working on building the exhaust system for my truck. So I had about 7-8 feet of exhaust pipe, 4-inch exhaust pipe left over from that air intake build, and I originally had the intent that I would use this somewhat later on down the road to build a 4-inch exhaust just so I can get a lot more flow for my truck. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to see if I can adapt this 4-inch pipe to basically just bolt up in place to my original exhaust system that I have right now. At least that's the idea in theory, but let me show you guys what all I have going on. Okay, so right here you can see I have my original exhaust system, but the idea is I'm going to keep this exhaust system that I have all in perfect shape because I know that this will definitely pass inspection. It's got a muffler and even has the soot trap on it as well, so that's all good to go. And so I'm going to leave this untouched, and I basically want to just build the rest of it from here on out. The challenge is this part that actually connects onto the downpipe from the turbocharger. Well, this thing is not 4-inch, whereas the 4-inch exhaust pipe I have is obvious. It's much larger. So of course what I'm going to do, I'm going to see if I can neck this down first, maybe using a hammer or something like that, maybe even heat it up a little bit. Let's see if I can kind of neck it down and then get it to something of the shape, and then of course build another adapter as well so that I can bolt it all together, and then we'll go from there. Alright, here goes nothing.
After hammering for quite some time on that 4-inch tubing, I quickly realized that shrinking it down any more than, say, about a 1/4 inch was going to be pretty darn difficult.
Grab some hearing protectors.
So the next thing that I decided to do was to get a piece of old 3.5-inch tubing from the exhaust, to kind of use that as a bit of a transition piece.
Okay, I think this section I can get out the cutting torch and I can heat it up, and hopefully that'll help me get this out a little bit better.
Heating up and bending the tubing definitely seemed to work a lot better than doing it without heat added. The only downside is it did take off a bit of the aluminized coating. After getting it all bent out, the next thing to do was to just weld it on. I ended up using my welding torch for that, though you could certainly use a MIG welder as well. After getting everything all welded up, the next thing I did was get out my grinder, and I just cut off the little excess piece I didn't need.
I have to expand this end here on the exhaust I'm building so that it looks very similar to this, so that whenever I put it all together, it should squeeze together and create a nice, decent seal. Clean that all up and then drill a couple holes in it and it should be good to go. Alright, I think I finally got the attachment plate set up just about how I want it. So I can see I had to do quite a bit of filing, and I didn't realize how basically this adapter I have here is actually, you know, I get the 3.5-inch pipe, but on the original I want to say next down to actually about like a 3-inch or something like that. And so this is going to be expanding a little bit, but it's fine, I suppose. I mean, it's still made out of 1/4-inch thick steel, so it should still be strong enough, and hopefully it'll have better airflow than I guess the stock form would have otherwise. But we'll try this out and see what happens. Alright, so we'll let that cool off now. Now I've got that flare on it. Hopefully that'll be good enough. Alright, well I finally got the flange all bolted on, and it actually went surprisingly easy. It just bolted right up like it should. So you look from this back side, and it appears to have seated on there like the original did, so that's definitely good. Alright, so now that I have the exhaust all bolted up and everything, the next thing I need to do is figure out where in the world I need to put this bend to basically get it from going out from underneath the truck to where it maybe dumps out right here at the side or something like that. So I really am just going to eyeball this. And this cut is basically where I'm going to hack it off so that I can then put a bend in it and then get it to where it'll come out to the side.
After getting everything off, the next task to do was put a nice 90-degree cut on it. I just used a piece of cardboard and that seemed to do the job just fine. Putting the cut-off wheel on the grinder and getting to work. Probably could have purchased a chop saw for this job, but fitting the theme of being cheap, I picked up this angle grinder for about 30 bucks from the local hardware store. Seemed to work just fine. Putting the pieces next to each other, you can kind of see where all this is going, and you get a good idea as to what the finished product's going to look like.
Alright, so to solve the issue of trying to get a nice bend on this whole thing, well, I figured I'd go to the store. It was like $30-something to get a nice mandrel bend 4-inch tubing. But I figured I already had the stuff sitting around, and one of the things I discovered was something called pie cuts. I went ahead and I made a guide for myself, and what's going to happen is I'm going to put this around my exhaust tubing, trace it out, and then cut it out and cut this. And you see that each part is what they call pie shaped a bit. And I can stack these up so that I can make basically whatever size, I guess, angle that I want. Now I'm doing if you don't know anything about pie cuts, I'm doing a 9-degree pie cut. So that's basically a total of 18 degrees is this included angle right here with this triangle. And then I'm also setting this up on a 4-inch radius. I'd never done this before, and I figured 4 inches is a good place to start. Same radius as the pipe itself. So we'll see what happens, see how all this pans out. Though you can do, I've heard, a lot tighter bends with the pie cut method.
After getting the guide all taped up, I ended up using a Sharpie to trace out the shape. Soapstone just didn't quite have the accuracy that I needed. Here you can see a nice completed piece of a pie cut. It actually turned out pretty well using just a grinder. Since I was using an angle grinder, not a chop saw, I ended up having some high spots on the cut itself that needed to be ground down in order to have a nice fit. Another neat trick I found is use the concrete floor of my garage to look for any high spots. Here you can see I'm kind of pointing to one of those high spots, and sometimes eyeballing it seems to work. Whatever you find works best. Here you can see I'm getting everything all tacked together. And again, I'm just eyeballing all this. Looking back, I probably could have used a center line to help everything get lined up a lot better. I guess I'll just have to apply that next time I do pie cuts. Make sure that everything's all fitted together nicely. Really seemed to help everything go together along the way. One of the other neat things I wanted to do was, since I might eventually plan on using this to make intercooler tubes, I ended up using a piece of aluminum foil to see if I could minimize weld splatter inside of the tube itself. Especially if you're building an intake, you don't want any of that weld splatter inside it. Next up came actually welding all the parts together. This took quite a bit of time considering how much welds I had to put together. Since the pipe I was welding on was rather thin, I ended up having used the start-stop method to make sure I didn't burn holes in everything. It probably didn't help that I was using one of the cheapest MIG welders money can buy, but luckily cleanup wasn't too terribly hard. I ended up using wire brush that seemed to do the job quite well. Some of the pieces of wire that came through, I ended up using a pair of pliers to break those off. All things considered, the inside actually turned out pretty well, as you can see right here. Though I could definitely tell having a better fitment would have gone a long way to helping minimize the splatter and all that inside. One of the other things to consider later on in the future. And that pretty much does it for the bend itself. Next step is to mount everything up and figure that part out.
Alright, I just got the exhaust pipe all put together, and the next thing I got to do is bolt it up to my truck. And so far, it looks pretty darn good, but we'll see how all that works out.
One of the things I realized after getting the exhaust all bolted up was that it was just a little bit too short, didn't quite come out to the edge of the truck like I wanted. So instead I went to the exhaust shop and I actually got a piece of 5-inch tubing like you see here, and I decided I'd use that to make an exhaust tip. So I used a Sharpie to mark some holes, I had 3 of them, and I just used a cutting torch to cut the holes out. And what I ended up doing was with those holes I put on some nuts so that I could basically run bolts and use that as a clamp to hold the tip on. Then it became just a matter of bolting everything up, and that seemed to solve the problem of extending it quite nicely. And it gave me the ability to alter the geometry as needed. Alright, now I'm underneath the truck, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to see if I can build sort of a mount using these existing mounts that I have, rubber mounts for my exhaust. Right now it's just held up with a piece of baling wire, but I think what I can do is that this piece of rebar I have sitting around looks like it lines up quite nicely. So what I'm going to do is kind of eyeball it here, give myself a little bit of a mark so I can know where to bend it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to see if I can put a bend around it so that it kind of wraps around, and then I can weld it on this back side and seal it. Well, I went ahead and got my exhaust clamp here all put together and welded on. As you can see, it's just a piece of rebar that I put on there, welded there. And I welded a little bit up top. That was a real pain to get. But then to secure it onto this rubber mount, what I'm doing is I put a little bit of a weld bead on the end of it. And then I ended up also putting a piece of this wire here to kind of make a clip to help make sure that it will hold together. Ain't the prettiest thing in the world, but hey, it works. And this should hopefully hold together, and it should be just fine. That should hopefully secure this whole exhaust, and I don't have to use that baling wire anymore. Alright guys, some good ideas what this exhaust sounds like. My little brother's been helping us out today, so kudos to him for helping us out with that. Let's go check it out. So there you go, so you can kind of get a bigger picture of how it all looks like. So if I go ahead and start it up for us. Guys, that pretty much does it for this video today. Hope y'all liked it, and if you did, click the like button, and if you have any questions or comments, just leave that in the box below. In the meantime, y'all have a good one.
Oh man, that's a bunch of crap right